All right, so we're diving into some college basketball tonight, and we've got a really interesting matchup on our hands, folks.
Yeah, definitely.
Notre Dame taking on Pittsburgh on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025.
Big game.
And we're going to try to figure out, does Notre Dame have what it takes to cover that plus 3.5-point spread?
Right.
And are we going to see a high-scoring game exceeding that 137.5 total?
Yeah, so you've got some really interesting sources here. I see FanDuel Research is giving us some betting trends and predictions.
Yeah.
And then we've got Bleacher Nation chiming in with their expert analysis.
Okay, so let's see what these sources have to tell us about this game.
Sounds good.
Right off the bat, both FanDuel Research and Bleacher Nation agree on those betting lines.
Oh.
Pittsburgh favored by 3.5, over/under at 137.5.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to their predictions for the game, they actually diverge a little bit. FanDuel Research, they're giving Pittsburgh a pretty strong chance of winning outright, like 67.2% based on their model.
Okay, makes sense.
But Bleacher Nation, they're actually going even further than that.
Oh, yeah.
They're saying Pittsburgh's not just going to win. They're going to cover that spread too.
Okay.
They've got Pittsburgh as their expert pick at minus 3.5, and they're even predicting a final score of 76-71, Pittsburgh.
Interesting.
So, both sources leaning towards Pittsburgh, but the level of confidence is a little different there.
Right. Yeah, it seems like the early read is on Pittsburgh winning and maybe even hitting that over as well.
Yeah, but here's where things get a little more interesting, okay?
Okay.
You start looking at Notre Dame's track record against the spread,
Yeah.
especially as an underdog, and suddenly the data from FanDuel Research starts painting a slightly different picture.
Oh, okay.
So when they're favored by 3.5 points or more, they cover the spread almost 58% of the time.
That bad?
Not bad, but here's the kicker. When they're the underdog, they actually cover even more often at 62.5%.
Wow. Okay, so they're actually better at covering when they're not expected to win.
Exactly. And here's the thing. This isn't just some long-term trend. It's happening this season too.
Oh, really?
When Notre Dame's been an underdog by 3.5 points or more, just like they are in this game, their record against the spread is 5-3.
Okay.
And Bleacher Nation, they're backing that up with their own analysis. Same 5-3 ATS record for Notre Dame in those specific situations.
Huh. Interesting. So maybe being the underdog takes some of the pressure off and lets them play a little more freely.
Yeah, maybe. So, it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when you compare that to how Pittsburgh has been performing against the spread.
Right. Yeah, let's take a look at their numbers.
All right, so FanDuel Research has them at 15 wins, 16 losses, no pushes against the spread overall.
Okay.
Bleacher Nation has them at 13 and 18.
All right, so a little bit of a discrepancy there.
Yeah, but the important part here is how they do when they're favored to win by a decent margin. Similar to this game.
Right. That's the key for our purposes.
Exactly. And both sources agree on this one. When Pittsburgh's favored by 3.5 points or more, their record against the spread drops to 9 wins and 10 losses.
So not great.
Not great. So they might be favored in this matchup, but they haven't been super reliable for bettors who are expecting them to cover a spread like this.
Okay, so what you're saying is even though Pittsburgh is favored, their track record of covering when expected to win by this much isn't so hot.
Exactly.
And on the other side, you've got Notre Dame, who seem to do well against the spread when they're the underdog.
Yeah, especially by a similar number of points.
So maybe there's an opportunity here with Notre Dame.
It's definitely something to consider. All right, let's switch gears now and talk about the total points.
Okay, the over-under is set at 137.5, right?
That's right. And this is where things get really interesting because both FanDuel Research and Bleacher Nation are suggesting we could be in for a high-scoring game.
Really? Okay, let's hear it.
So FanDuel Research points out that the average total points in Pittsburgh's games this season is 10.4 points higher than that 137.5 line.
Wow, okay, that's significant.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's average total is also well above the line at 9.2 points higher.
So both teams are consistently involved in games that go over this current total.
Exactly. It's not just a couple of random high-scoring games. It's a trend for both teams.
Wow. Okay, that really makes you think.
Yeah, and get this. When you look at the combined average points per game for Pittsburgh and Notre Dame, it comes out to 150.3.
Okay.
Which is 12.8 points over that one, 37.5 over under.
Wow. All right, so based on their averages alone, this game should easily go over.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for the over. And here's another thing to think about. It's not just their own scoring that's driving those high totals.
Oh, okay. What else is there?
Well, FanDuel research also tells us that the opponents of Pittsburgh and Notre Dame,
Yeah.
they average a combined 6.9 more points per game than that 137.5 total.
So even if one team has a bit of an off night offensively, their opponent might pick up the slack.
Exactly. So even if one team struggles to score, the other team might be able to carry the total over the line.
Right, that makes sense. So you're saying both teams tend to play in high-scoring games, whether they're the ones doing the scoring or not.
Exactly. And to understand that a little bit better, let's take a closer look at some of those offensive and defensive stats that Bleacher Nation provides.
Okay, yeah, let's break it down.
Okay, so Pittsburgh, they're averaging 76.6 points per game
Okay.
and allowing 71.4.
Okay, so they can score, but they also give up a decent amount of points.
Right. Notre Dame, they're scoring 73.7 points per game
Okay.
and allowing 73 even.
All right, so both teams are operating in that low to mid-70s range on both ends of the court.
Yeah, pretty similar there.
Yeah, for sure.
But then when you look at efficiency, like how many points they score per 100 possessions, things get even more interesting.
Okay. Yeah, efficiency is always a good indicator.
So Pittsburgh scores about 101.5 points per 100 possessions.
All right.
But they allow 94.5.
Okay.
Notre Dame scores 98.7 and allows 97.7.
So what jumps out at you when you compare those numbers?
Well, for me, it's the fact that even though Pittsburgh's offense is a little more efficient, their defense is actually less efficient than Notre Dame's.
Interesting. So Notre Dame's not too far behind Pittsburgh in terms of scoring efficiency, but they seem to be a bit better at preventing points per possession.
Yeah, exactly. But both teams are still giving up a fair amount of points per possession overall, which, further supports that idea that this game could go over.
Right, yeah. Those defensive numbers definitely lean towards a higher total.
Okay, so we've looked at the team stats now. Let's talk about the players who could really make a difference in this game, both in terms of the spread and the total.
All right, yeah. Let's see who the key contributors are.
So Bleacher Nation highlights a couple big names for Notre Dame.
Okay.
First, you've got Marcus Burton.
Okay.
This guy's averaging an impressive 22.2 points per game, and he's also leading the team in assists.
Wow. All right. So he's a real offensive threat.
Yeah. And then you've got Braden Shrewsbury.
Okay.
He's a sharpshooter from beyond the arc, hitting almost three-pointers per game.
Nice. So he can light it up from deep.
Exactly, which can really boost that score quickly.
Definitely.
All right, now for Pittsburgh, Bleacher Nation highlights Jalen Lowe.
Okay.
He's their leading scorer and assist man.
Okay, so another well-rounded guard.
Yeah, and then there's Ishmael Leggett.
Okay.
He's their top rebounder, and he can put up some serious points too.
All right, so a force in the paint.
Yeah, and then you've got Zach Austin, who can knock down some threes for them as well.
So they've got a pretty balanced attack.
Yeah, they do. And all of these players are capable of having big scoring nights, which again points towards the overhitting.
Right, and for Notre Dame to cover Burton's scoring ability could be huge in keeping them within that 3.5-point margin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We also have a recent head-to-head matchup to consider.
Oh, right. Yeah, how did that one go?
So Notre Dame versus Pittsburgh. A statistical comparison says that Pittsburgh won a super close game on February 22nd, 73-72.
Wow, 1-point game.
Yeah, which, right there suggests that maybe this current spread is a little too generous to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, a 1-point difference definitely indicates that these teams are pretty evenly matched.
Exactly.
Which, supports the argument that Notre Dame could very well cover that plus 3.5.
Absolutely. But there's actually a bit of a contradiction here.
Oh, really?
The source called npitcover.pdf, it reports the score of that same February 22nd game as Pittsburgh 72, Notre Dame 76.
Wait, so they're saying Notre Dame won?
Yeah, it's a pretty big discrepancy.
Huh, that's interesting. I wonder what happened there.
Yeah, it just goes to show that even in sports reporting, mistakes can happen.
True.
But the important thing is that both sources agree that it was a really close game.
Right.
Decided by either 1 point or 4 points, depending on which source you're looking at.
Right. So regardless of who officially won it was a tight one.
Exactly. And npitcover.pdf actually goes on to highlight that Marcus Burton from Notre Dame had a career high 43 points in that game.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, if he can even come close to replicating that kind of offensive explosion, Notre Dame's chances of covering go way up.
Yeah. I mean, 43 points is a huge outlier, but it does show that Burton has the potential to completely take over a game.
Right. It's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about the context for this game.
Okay, yeah. What's the setup?
All right, so it's an ACC tournament game taking place in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, so neutral site.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which can sometimes level the playing field a bit, you know?
Right, yeah, definitely.
It's an afternoon game tipping off at 2 p.m. Eastern Time,
Okay.
and it's going to be broadcast on ACC Network.
All right, so both teams will be looking to make a statement on a big stage.
Exactly. As npitcover.pdf points out, this is a crucial game for both teams as they try to advance in the tournament.
Right, yeah, the stakes are high.
So, when we take everything into account, it really looks like there's a strong case to be made for both Notre Dame covering that plus 3.5 spread and for the game going over that 137.5 total.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, while the initial expert picks seem to favor Pittsburgh covering and maybe even the under hitting,
Yeah,
the data we've uncovered today, it presents a pretty convincing counter-argument,
definitely.
especially when you focus on Notre Dame's performance as an underdog and the consistent scoring trends of both teams.
Exactly. So, even though conventional wisdom might be pointing in one direction, the numbers are telling a slightly different story. Yeah, for sure. And that's why we love doing these deep dives, digging into the data and uncovering these hidden trends.
Right, and ultimately it's up to each individual to decide how they want to interpret this information.
Exactly.
But we've given you the tools to make an informed decision.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about.
All right, so before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
We've talked about Notre Dame's impressive record against the spread as an underdog.
Yeah.
And we've seen how both teams are constantly involved in games that go over this 137.5 point total.
Right.
So here's the question I want you to consider.
Okay.
What single factor do you think will be the most important in determining whether Notre Dame covers and the over hits?
That's a good question.
Will Marcus Burton have another explosive scoring performance?
Yeah.
Will Pittsburgh struggle to cover as a favorite once again?
Right.
Or could the neutral court environment play a bigger role than the stats might suggest?
Those are all really interesting possibilities.
Yeah, so, think about it. Analyze the information and see what conclusions you come to as we get closer to tip-off.
Yeah. It'll be exciting to see how this one plays out.
For sure, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.
See you then.
I wanted to bet this one last night. That's what my note said right here. It said didn't even have the lineup for this game. It opened at 6.5. I liked High Point first half, full game, money line, everything in this one. They fit all my categories to the T. I'm talking about they're stronger on offense, stronger on defense, and just a way overall better team right here. And this one, I believe, is a pretty close. These two teams are close to each other as well. I said I wasn't gonna get involved, but here we going against the rules always, man. But yeah, this one I believe is pretty close to High Point and Gardner Webb. But High Point again, the better. Well, not so much the better team in this one, but overall better team in this one going into this one right here. And I seen a little sneak peek. I'm gonna tell you what I really did. I seen a little sneak peek when I was watching TV that showed they've been partying it up real good in celebration of something this week over at High Point, and I just feel they're gonna carry that energy over into Gardner Webb, and Gardner Webb is just on their last legs, and they're gonna stump them out today. I think that's why they didn't put it up early, because it's probably gonna be a blowout victory. When it came up, I got it at -8.5. Which is kind of high, but if I'll take it at 7.5, I'll take it at 8.5. I think High Point comes out of there winning by 10.